Hey, this is Kristen Tripp with Yellow Dog Fly Fishing. I run the Cuba program for Yellow Dog, and I'm going to do a quick overview of the 5 different fisheries that you can experience on a fishing trip to Cuba. All right, we're going to start out with fisheries that are accessed via Havana. Havana is a fabulous city. There's lots of great things to see and do there, and you can always add a couple days onto your trip in order to have a more cultural experience. We've got the contacts to be able to facilitate that and make it a really nice overall experience for you. I'm going to start out with the Zapata fishery. The Zapata Peninsula is this boot-shaped fishery off the southern coast of Cuba. You travel from Havana over to the Bay of Pigs, and then this liveaboard program covers the Las Salinas Flats right here, which are super skinny water flats for bonefish and great for wading. And then the boat will move west into territories for permit and for tarpon as well. The Zapata Peninsula itself, it has a lot of springs that well up from the center of peninsula. And so you get a lot of tannic water and tea-colored water, which can lend itself well to some of those browns and greens, darker colored permit flies, making a little bit of a more unusual dynamic for catching permit and a more unusual arrangement for fishing for all species down there. So that's the Zapata Peninsula. It's aboard a boat called the Georgiana, and 8 anglers aboard is the max. Most of the liveaboard trips are best suited for groups of at least 6 or more. So if you have a party of 6 anglers, all the way up to 12 anglers, that's going to be ideal for most of the trips. Zapata Peninsula in particular taps out at 8 anglers, is a really great way for you and a group of your best fishing buddies to enjoy Cuba together for a week of fishing. The next fishery that we're going to cover is called Isla de la Juventud, or the Isle of Youth. It's this big island off the southern coast of Cuba, and the fishing program services all the keys to the east of Juventud till about halfway through these keys. This map doesn't do it justice. There's a lot more going on in this whole string of keys, this archipelago that's off the eastern coast of Juventud. The liveaboard program will originate, again, the trip starts in Havana. You transfer over to the Bay of Pigs, and then you board the boat for the entire week out of Zapata Port, which is in the Bay of Pigs. Your boat will overnight move you to the start of the fishing program, which starts somewhere along the east coast of Juventud. And then while you're out fishing every single day for tarpon, tons of different opportunities. It's a very tarpon-focused trip. While you're fishing, every single night, the boat will move to a different location. There's all sorts of different strategies and ways in which to fish for tarpon in this particular fishery. There's baby tarpon, there's big tarpon. Sometimes they'll want to throw on intermediate line to be able to get deeper in the water column if the fish are deeper down. There's mangrove lagoons and a lot of really diverse areas. There's a reef that you will fish for a couple days during the week. So it's really fun and really perfect for the tarpon junkie. Tons of snook in that fishery as well. Big barracuda, big snapper, jacks. There are a couple days for the permit angler to scratch that permit itch. You're gonna fish some of the permit flats off the northern side of those keys and a little bit of bone fishing. But really, Juventud is all about tarpon. Really is a very remote and special place to be able to fish for those tarpon. Once the week is over, you'll say goodbye to your guides on the last day of fishing. They'll go back to Juventud. They were all native to Juventud and live there. And your boat will then make its way back to Zapata Port, where you will disembark to be able to catch departing flights out of Havana. The third fishery off the southern coast here is Cayo Largo, and this stands for Long Key, obviously. Cayo Largo, it's buried in here on this map. It does have an airport, but it's not very functional for any of our flights, unfortunately. The southern coast of Cayo Largo has a beach that's about 1.5 miles long, this beautiful white sand beach. It's also serviced by a liveaboard boat. You board in Zapata Port. First morning, you are in a port that's off the southern coast of Cayo Largo that starts the week of fishing. Cayo Largo and its neighboring fisheries are really considered the permit capital of Cuba. Expansive permit flats, really great opportunities for lots of shots at permit, both off the northern side of the island and off the southern side of the island. And the guides there are super motivated. If you catch a permit, they're gonna try to get a grand slam for you. There are some baby tarpon in the fishery reliably in certain areas. Migratory fish can also move through that fishery during certain times of year. Plenty of bonefish opportunities, and certainly some opportunities around Cayo Largo as well for other diversity of species such as snook, big kudas, jacks, really anything you want to target, you can catch there. So Cayo Largo, again, live aboard boat program. It services up to 10 to 12 anglers on any given week. Permit capital of Cuba, so hard to go wrong with one of those trips. I'm now going to move to some of the fisheries that are further to the east in Cuba. All of these fisheries, both north and south, are accessed through the city of Camagüey. And currently there are direct flights daily from Miami to Camagüey on American Airlines. So that lands you in this really cool old colonial city that is super sleepy. Could be interesting for some people who want to have a little bit of culture to be able to spend an extra night or maybe two in Camagüey. If you transfer to the north, then you are heading to Cayo Romano and this little tiny key out here, which is essentially like a little sand spit called Cayo Cruz, or potentially to Cayo Paredon, which is slightly west. Cayo Romano refers to the greater archipelago and all of this area of mangroves and little tiny keys and back bays that you can find in this particular fishery. The fishery runs all the way from over here to the east, all the way to this cut here. So it's actually quite expansive for the Cayo Romano, Cayo Cruz fishing program. When you travel out here to fish out here, you do stay in a land-based hotel on Cayo Cruz. It's a fine hotel, it's nice and clean. The food can be a little bit lackluster, so this trip is really for the die-hard angler that wants to enjoy fishing, have adequate accommodations, but it has a little bit of flexibility as it relates to cuisine preferences. Regardless, there are tons of permit out here and tons of bonefish. Hurricane Irma, when it moved through the fishery, actually sat on the top of the key of Cayo Cruz and ground it clean. It sat there for 8 hours. It wiped out all the mangroves. And what happened as a result was the following years after recovery from Hurricane Irma, the sand flats were pristine. They were completely turned over, which translated into really happy bonefish and really happy permit who found lots of great food there. And as such have grown to some really fantastic sizes. Bonefish in this particular fishery, you can find some specimens up in the 10 and 11 pound class. As a bonefish destination, Cayo Cruz should be on just about anybody's list. And really, you're not gonna find bonefish that size maybe in Los Roques, which we currently don't travel to, or perhaps the Seychelles. So it's a really great opportunity for really big bonefish and plenty of shots at permit. They do offer migratory tarpon as well. Sometimes those migratory fish in the migration months will move through that fishery. The tarpon migration in Cuba can be anywhere from late April all the way into early July. If you enjoy wade fishing, then this is really the destination that I would send you to as well. You don't have to wade, but if wading is something that you enjoy, catching that slack tide usually in the middle of the day or in the afternoon, hopefully, depending upon the tides during your particular time that you're there, can offer some really great wade fishing opportunities, both for bonefish and for permit. Cayo Paredon is the next fishery, which is similar in another land-based fishery that's slightly to the west. It's one of the newer fishing programs that we've rolled out in Cuba, and it's in an all-inclusive resort, so think big resort, probably a lot of Canadian compadres there sunning themselves and drinking plenty of the ample rum and Cristal cerveza that's on tap there. So a different environment in that it's not a small lodge scenario that you might find in a lot of, say, Mexico or the Bahamas. It's a really big all-inclusive resort, a nice place to be able to base out of, to then be able to go into the waters of Cayo Paredon, which is serviced by a number of fairly dated skiffs. They're mid-sea skiffs, which provide adequate access to wade fishing for bonefish, of which there's plenty of territory, both inside the key here and on the outside, and some of the most gorgeous white sand permit flats I've seen anywhere. So another good option, Cayo Paredon is probably the most affordable option as far as a fishing program in any of our lineups for any of our Cuba offerings. So definitely one to consider if you want to get your toes wet, no pun intended, in Cuba's fisheries, and check it out. Also serviced through Camagüey is the famous Jardines de la Reina, or the Gardens of the Queen. This fishery is notorious for needing to be on every angler's bucket list at some point in time. The Keys, which are this archipelago out here, are located 60 miles off the southern coast of Cuba. This is a world-renowned diving destination. It's some of the most pristine reef scenarios you can find anywhere in the world, and divers do indeed come from all over the world in order to dive in this fishery. Gardens of the Queen is serviced by a number of different liveaboard boats. Avalon 4 is a boat that serves both divers and anglers at the same time. So if you have a smaller group in your party, say 2 or 4 of you that are interested in fishing in this fishery, there's a high likelihood that you'll be on a liveaboard boat that's shared with divers and anglers for the week. It's a huge boat, so you've got plenty of space. And what they'll do, as far as the program out there, is they split this fishery into 3 different zones. Each liveaboard that's out in this fishery for the 2025 and 2026 seasons will be stationed in one of those zones. It's a very diverse fishery. It's well known for migratory tarpon. They'll be actually posted up in some of the channels here, and if you catch it right, and who knows what right is, we can hedge our bets, but there's no guarantee. But if you catch it at its best, you can really see the tarpon migration in high numbers and really get into a lot of fish. There's also fantastic permit fishing out here. Bonefish are a species that can be targeted as well, depending upon the tides and which area within the fishery you're in. And of course, all the other fun species that you can target in Cuba. Massive barracuda, excellent snook fishing, jacks, snapper, etc. One of the most unique things about Cuba, and ironically such, is all of these fishing areas where we send our anglers are all marine protected areas. They have been established by the Castro administration quite some time ago and have had very limited traffic. So every single week in any of these fisheries, there's a very limited number of skiffs, and those are the only skiffs that are going to be in any of these fisheries on that given week. So it provides you an opportunity, unlike places like the Bahamas or Belize, where you're sharing the same fishery with a lot of different lodges and a lot of different skiffs. It allows you the opportunity to essentially be the only skiff on the water. If you see another skiff out there, it's likely to be somebody who you're sharing the boat with for the week as far as a base or the land-based lodge. So pretty special place to be able to fish. So that's the overview of the fisheries in Cuba. And if you do have any interest in potentially putting together a trip down there, I'd love to chat with you. Give us a call at Yellow Dog.